Apparently, you're live now.
Oh, okay. Aloha. And welcome to Aquarian Radio. No, this isn't Aquarian Radio. This is Sacred Matrix. Where am I? Sorry. On Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I am your host, Janet Kara Lessin. I think that's who I am. And I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. And our producer today is Thomas Becker. And our very special guest today is Maxwell Igan. And let me tell you a little bit about him. I have a long bio up on aquarianradio.com. And Max Igan is a researcher, radio host, and filmmaker. His real name is anonymous, and his second name is Maxwell. And he doesn't tell us his last name. It's anonymous. But the pen name, Max Igan, that he has become known by is a combination of his middle name and his son's middle name. And Igan is the original Irish spelling of the name Ian. And no, he doesn't have any Irish roots. He just liked the name. It's a great name, though, Maxwell Igan. And I'm going to let him tell you more about himself. He's a very diverse, amazing person. He's an artist, much like a mad painter. You two could swap some stories. And he's got some perspectives on the world which will make you stand up and pay attention. Sasha, you want to say anything before we bring on Maxwell?
Oh, I look forward to your presentation. I hung out with a lot of people that like to break icons, and I think you're one of them.
So welcome to our show, Max.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking me to come and have a chat.
We're very happy to have you here. So you're traveling the world right now, and you're on some kind of tour, and you're in Los
Angeles. Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles at the moment. Yeah, I've been traveling since January. I've been all over. I've been through Peru and Mexico and Hawaii and LA and Philly and Canada and England and Europe. And now I'm back in LA, and I'm going back to Europe again next month. And I've got to speak in Copenhagen, and I've got another talk that I've got to do in England. And I'm doing a lot of Kambo workshops over there as well. I also serve Kambo, which is a South American frog venom. Kind of an interesting medicine for people. Very cleansing, but I've been doing a lot of that as well. So I've got a lot of workshops to do in Holland, and I've got a lot of workshops to do in November in Hawaii as well. Never know, I might be able to catch up in Hawaii. What island are you guys on?
We're on the island of Maui.
Okay.
And,
Is that substance you mentioned an entheogen as a dimethyltryptamine? What is it?
No, it's Kambo. It's frog venom. It's very cleansing. It basically goes into your lymph system and bonds to all the toxins and dioxins and heavy metals in your body, and it's very purgative. You purge them out. You apply it by burning holes in the skin and applying the venom directly onto the dermis, and it goes straight into the lymph system. Quite intense, but very, very cleansing.
Wow, never heard of that one. I've heard of people doing frog as a DMT type.
This is to draw something out of you.
This is to draw it out of you.
Yeah,
it's quite amazing. Wow. It's quite amazing. I've had people pull out medicines that they've had since childhood. I did a girl recently who had an operation 3 years ago, and she's a very, very healthy woman. Like she's a raw foodist, very, very cleansing diet, very healthy. She's 38 years old. She's got skin like a 25-year-old. Very, very healthy woman, and she had an operation on her ovaries 3.5 years ago. And even though she's on a very, very cleansing diet, when I served at the Kambo, she started sweating so profusely, and she smelled like a hospital. She smelled like a pharmacy. It was all of the chemicals coming out of her that they gave her during her treatment in hospital. She was amazed at how much the chemicals came out, and she felt all these electrical sensations around the area where she'd had the operation as the Kambo was going to work and healing and pulling all this stuff out. So, yeah, it's amazing stuff. It's very, very cleansing. It gets stuff out that you can't get out any other way.
Is it hard to get? Is there a limited supply of it? It sounds wonderful.
Oh, no, it's quite easy to get hold of, like Kambo. Just Google it. You'll find there's quite a lot of practitioners. I'm actually doing workshops in Hawaii in November if you want to attend. I mean, you'll find a link on my website, prohouse.com. Go check it out. You might even want to come over, jump across the island and come and hang out for a week and go through the ceremony.
Wow. Sounds very interesting. So we can go in a million directions. I was listening to a lot of your broadcasts, and you can go over the charts from current events and what's going on in the world to ancient history and all kinds of conspiracy and variations on the theme. Where would you like to start? We have 2 hours, and we'll tarry with you on a long journey. And if you don't mind, periodically we'll interject and ask some questions for clarification.
Not a problem. Well, look, there's a lot of things we could focus on. I mean, one of the main things I've been looking at lately is the rollout of this smart grid and the whole 5G network. I think the smart grid is extremely important for people to focus on. You know, with all the stuff that we're facing, we've got so many, you know, things coming at us from so many angles. All the political theatre that's going on at the moment, the theatres of war, the conflicts, everything that is out there to distract us. But underneath all that is this smart grid, the Internet of Things, the 5G grid. All this is the new world order. This is the control grid itself, the whole smart system, the move towards a cashless society, which they really would like to introduce very quickly. They'd like the whole world to go cashless, or the whole Western world to go cashless by 2020 if they could. I mean, they'd like to have it done now if they could, but everyone's been kind of slow on the uptake for that one.
What drives this this smart group? What are they moving us toward a singularity where artificial intelligence is going to rule things?
Well, the way it's going, like people, when they look at AI, they don't differentiate between artificial intelligence and autonomic intelligence. You know, really what we're heading to is an autonomic system, a fully automated autonomic system, which will be self-regulating, self-correcting, self-programming. That's the way we're going, with a digital currency and a cashless grid with everything automated. So you pay per use for everything. That's the way it's going. I mean, essentially it will be controlled by AI, but it won't be artificial intelligence. It will be autonomic intelligence. And essentially when it gets to a point where it becomes fully autonomic, then it becomes like virtual life, only it's a virtual life which is not like life as we know it. I mean, it's devoid of emotion. It's devoid of reflecting upon its consciousness or anything like that. It's just a system that operates according to certain parameters, and the parameters that we're programming it into are economic parameters. So it's going to apply an economic value to everybody and everything will be automated. And with the smart system, the way it's going, I mean, it'll be pay per use for everything. You know, you'll pay every time you open the fridge, every time you turn on your kettle to boil coffee or whatever. You'll be pay per use every time you switch on a light or open your door, anything like that. Couple of cents will be deducted from your account. But it's getting to the point where things will be becoming so automated and so autonomic that even employment is going to disappear for many people in many fields. So if you're in a system where you have to pay to be alive, where are you supposed to get your money from? You know, it kind of leads you towards a welfare state as well, whereby everybody is allotted a certain amount of digital credits that they need in order to function, and they pay for every single aspect of their life. And it is governed by what is essentially AI, but it will be an autonomic intelligence, not really an artificial intelligence. I mean, artificial intelligence would it would imply some sort of thinking and reasoning and emotion and, you know, a way to be able to debate with this kind of intelligence, but it won't be like that. It'll be autonomic, and there will be two types of individuals, those who are desirable and those who are undesirable. And either you comply with the system or you're switched off and you're an outcast. It's as simple as that. And if you want to shop or use anything in the city, you want to have power or anything like that, any of the convenience or commodities that we have in our modern world, then you'll have to be part of the system. That's the way it's going, you know.
But you can still ask, or I would still ask, since there's the suffering that humanity goes through and the things that have driven this automation seem to have coalesced in a way that's beyond chance. It seems that all the suffering which continually gets to be channeled into military and medical, also used for military and transportation kinds of things. It gets all this problems get driven into that, which is ultimately what's leading the charge to have this artificial intelligence. So if this is, even though it's automatic and it seems like it's just a function of the system itself, is there a design that's being put upon the system by something or someone or some intelligence outside of the system?
Well, I would think so. I mean, you would think so, but you've got to wonder where that comes from. I mean, there's all sorts of areas we can speculate. Some would go into biblical fields. Some people may, want to talk about archons or multidimensional aspects
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. We can debate that all you like, but having the answer to it is another thing. I think the problem is that we spend too much focus on trying to figure out who they are, who to point the finger at, rather than looking at what the glue that holds it together is and stepping away from it and refusing to comply to it. Ultimately, the system only functions because we agree with it, we go along with it. Even if you want to get into like, satanic aspects of it, if you want to believe that this is the Lucifer system that is being put in place. This is the beast system, and they tell us everything they're going to do the way the Illuminati do. They always put it out there and let you know what they're doing. We have to agree with it. We have to comply with it. If we were to change our perspective and do the right thing in all that we do, and to stop complying with anything that causes wrong behavior, anything that leads to harm, injury, or death to another, then the system would fall apart in a day. It only works because we comply with it. And that's why it's so useless even trying to put another system in place or remove this government and replace them with someone else, because it's the system itself. You could arrest every single politician in the world and put them in jail and put in all the best people you could find for the job. But if we're still using this tech and we're still leading towards this automated system, under the guise of convenience for ourselves, then we're still leading towards this smart grid, which is essentially going to control every aspect of our lives. It's the grid itself which will end up controlling it. At the moment, what's motivating people to bring it in place is greed. Like this whole 5G thing that's being rolled out, all these companies are looking at this. If we can get in on the ground floor, we'll make billions and billions of dollars, huge profits to be made. That's the carrot that's being dangled out there for people. But ultimately, it's all leading towards automation. And once it becomes fully autonomic, the system itself won't differentiate between anybody. It won't differentiate between rich and poor, or Jew and Goyim, or Christian or Muslim, or anybody, black or white, anybody. It won't differentiate. It'll just be human and non-human. That's it. You comply with the system or you're locked out. So, who's motivating it at the moment and who's driving it? I mean, there's all sorts of secret societies that have been vying for control. There's all of these secret societies that work with each other, but also sort of compete with each other behind the scenes. Like each one thinks they're going to be the one that ends up at the top of the pile. But it's almost like you've got all of these different doctors creating this Frankenstein monster, and they all think they're going to be the ones that control it at the end. But the monster itself is becoming self-controlling. It's becoming fully autonomic on its own. And once it's put in place and it controls everything, and everything just runs according to the automatic system, then it's not going to matter who the other people are. They'll be locked out as much as everybody else. Even the ones who built it will be locked out.
Well, isn't it basically unsustainable eventually? Because unless it's fun, life won't incarnate. Unless there's some joy somewhere, we're going to stop coming here as souls. We just aren't going to come in.
Well,
and isn't that the whole thing? It's not intelligence, it's about diversifying and co-creating source. Go ahead.
Well, maybe this is even a fail-safe. I mean, I did a show a month or so ago called Giving Life to Lucifer, where I went through the whole metaphorical biting of the apple. What happens when you go on this quest for knowledge? And what happens? I mean, why do we need to know all this stuff? Why do we need to know how old the tree is so we cut it down and measure the rings, and then we haven't got the tree? Why can't we just enjoy the shade of the tree? Why do we need to know all these things we need to know? It doesn't really serve our life. We've just got this obsession with needing to know everything about everything. And, you got to ask yourself, what for? I mean, sure, just because it's nice to know and we're intuitive creatures, but ultimately, why? Why do we need to know all this stuff to get through our lives? We don't. If this is a spiritual journey, if it's about, a man and a woman getting to know each other, or getting to know what life is about, or what procreation is about, or just the meaning of anything, why do we need to know all of this nitty-gritty scientific details? We just don't. So once you get on that path, things tend to go wrong. And then once you introduce a usurious monetary system over that quest for knowledge, a usurious monetary system, an interest-based monetary system, this puts everybody in a state of scarcity, and it creates a need for more efficiency. The system's got to become more and more efficient, and eventually it leads to automation. Eventually it leads to something like the creation of the internet, just out of our pure quest for knowledge. And what is the internet? When you look at the internet, look at the biblical concept of Lucifer. What is Lucifer? Lucifer is the bearer of light. What is light? Light is information. Light is knowledge. What is the internet? It's the bearer of light. It brings us all this knowledge. What does Lucifer break down to? Lucas is light, and cipher is code. Could be the code that bears the light. Could easily be the internet that was referring to. It's almost like a fail-safe. And the internet now is you can think of it as a virtual life, a virtual brain, and every person that plugs into it that operates on a computer is like a neural node of the internet and is giving all of their information. The internet is learning from every single person that's operating within it, and it's gathering all the information of mankind. And once the system becomes fully autonomic, it could easily get to a point where it simply locks us out. And by that time, we'll have lost all our life skills to the extent that if the internet controls all of our financial systems and all of our electrical systems and the flow of all of our food and all of our information, if we get shut out of it, people are going to be so bereft of life skills, they're not going to know how to function without it. You know, all this stuff that exists in a virtual world, it isn't real. It isn't really, we don't need it to function in the real world at all. But if you turn it off, if you turn the virtual world off, people will be so disconnected from the real world because they're so dependent on the virtual world for their real world to function now that they won't know what to do.
Think they'll just go back to nature. We've seen this in cycles. Sasha wants to say something.
Well, it's just that you're saying that the way to rise above the system is basically to exercise the sanction of nullity, as Faber called it. You know, stop participating, boycott, stop supporting institutions that support hierarchy and greed. But that's like saying, you know, if grandma had wheels, she'd be a bicycle. It's hard for me to see how that would come about. Yeah.
It's very, very difficult. That's the thing. You know, we've got to a point now where, you know, the technology is what's running our lives, and we need the technology to run our lives, but the technology itself is what is leading to our slavery. And we're forgetting what life was like without the technology. I mean, think about it. Like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we didn't have the internet. 30 years ago, we were living our lives without it, and everything was fine. But now, yeah, it's very, very difficult to imagine life without the internet. And we've lost so many life skills in the last 30 years. And if we get to a point where we lose all of our life skills and then suddenly we're locked out of the internet, it's almost like a fail-safe. It's almost like a fail-safe mechanism that will take humanity to a point. And if we don't smarten up, I mean, the internet has given us all the information we need to change the world should we choose to do it. But if we don't, if we allow ourselves to continue going into this smart system, which is basically taking all of our life skills from us and, you know, doing everything for us, then we're just going to get led to slaughter. It's going to get to a point where the internet becomes fully autonomic, and all it's going to do is take for a technician to try to regain control of the internet, and the internet will see them as a virus, as a hacker, and it will just lock humanity out. And then we lose access to all of this stuff. So you could think of it like a fail-safe. And when you look at a lot of the ancient civilizations that have come about in the past and how they've just suddenly disappeared and gone nowhere, what happened to all these civilizations? It's almost like the same thing. You know, if we get to that point where we lose the path of our spirituality completely, we get offered this choice, and we can either take it or we can get locked out, you know?
Right. They had their own internet back then, and Heinlein explored this extensively in all of his novels. And basically, getting fed the totality of existence and the human condition and what it's like. And the internet, Minerva became empathetic and fell in love with humanity, just like Enki fell in love with his, creations. So there's always that possibility that the Frankenstein will come to learn to love his creature. But what did you want to say, Sasha?
Well, also that one of the Russell Brenninger has talked about the possibility that some of the ET interventions, or whatever they are, the unusual happenings outside of the box, might be the voice of nature itself, that perhaps the Greys are ambassadors of the planet itself, which has an intelligence which is trying desperately through various mechanisms to communicate with us. And a lot of our clients do really say, I can feel nature. And I get that that's happening with you too, that you're actually feeling the planet. Do I got you right?
Well, yeah, in certain experiences I've had in ceremonies, I've had those sorts of insights where, massive connection to the earth, connection to nature, a connection to the living spirit of this world that we live on, which is a pretty profound thing. As far as other interventions and things, I mean, I just don't go there in a lot of my talks and things because I just can't prove any of it. All I can do is offer speculation on other people's speculation. So I figure it just muddies the waters. So because I mean, unless I can prove something or I've got first-hand knowledge of it, I usually don't go that way very much. It's a weird thing, the whole ET, alien, whatever. I mean, there's so many conflicting stories. And as far as my experience goes, people ask me what I think about the whole ET question. And I answer that I've seen UFOs in the sky, metallic discs, textbook UFOs, glowing lights, the whole thing. I don't know who drove them. I don't know whether they were ours or whether they were someone else's. I know that I have seen objects flying in the sky that are not identified. And so I know that's real. The rest of it, I don't know. All I've got is other people's speculation to go on.
Right. Well, we have a lot of testimonials. We interviewed thousands of people, different experiencers and whistleblowers, and so that takes us outside of this current human planetary box. But then it just gets more complex because if this internet is the force is going to take over, it's probably already done so. We're in the system that they already created because the secret space program, they're out in space. They're traveling beyond the solar system. If that's true, what do you want to say, Sasha?
Well, just there's the matter of evidence that you get by hypotheses, by people's talks about extraterrestrials. And so when the Sumerians say that their gods dictated that there was planets beyond their sight at Neptune and Uranus, and lo, said there was water on Mars, and there is, or that there was a land continent beneath the ice, and then those things turn out to be true. It doesn't mean the explanation for them is true, but it does give you a certain kind of evidentiary support, I think.
Well, to a degree, in as much as I haven't been to Mars to confirm it, I haven't been to the South Pole to confirm it. I take everything I read with a grain of salt. I take everything everybody tells me with a grain of salt. Even with Sitchin stuff, a lot of the credence I gave it for a long time, I take it with a grain of salt. Even when I look at Sumer and what the evidence that we get from the texts in Sumer, you've got to remember that Sumer was the head of commerce in the ancient world. It was a trading center. Most of the tablets that were left there, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of tablets, a very, very small percentage of them contained any of this story. Most of them were accounting ledgers because, the Sumerians were kind of like the Goldman Sachs of the ancient world. This is not a good source of creation tales. But I mean, having said that, there's something going on there, but I just take everything with a grain of salt. I don't believe anything. And I still keep my mind open. I'm open to consider any possibility, but I don't believe anything. I think belief is the enemy of knowledge, and we've got to be very careful what we believe and what we tend to. When we lock ourselves into beliefs, we tend to cherry pick information and find stuff that reinforces our beliefs, and we tend to lock other stuff out. And I'm quite willing to consider everything. So. It's a possibility of all of that. The whole concept of what Sitchin put forth is a possibility. I do question a lot of it because I question his methods of translation and stuff like that. And I was very, very convinced in what Sitchin was saying was true for a while. Well, I was very going down that path anyway, and it was the best, most reasonable explanation I'd found so far at that time. So. But now, hey, I'm still quite open to possibility. Even with what we're facing now with the internet and all this stuff going on, when you look at quantum computers and 3-strand DNA computers, D-Wave computers, stuff they're building now, there's a possibility that what's going on here has even been brought in to this realm via quantum computing. There may be a system, if you look at parallel realities, the concept of this sort of thing, of course, all hypothetical, all highly speculative. But if you look at this sort of stuff, building a quantum computer that's going to be extracting information from other realities, is it possible that in one of those realities, a computer system, an AI, has already taken over that reality and has now infiltrated into this reality and put these algorithms in place, which is just leading all towards automation and leading us that way? you know. So
Yeah.
this is quite possible as well. Is this what CERN's are doing, you know? Even when you look at all the ancient Egyptian mythology of the, you know, these ancient gods that look like, you know, jackal heads and, you know, Isis heads and all this sort of stuff, you know, Anubis and all, you know, all these weird Egyptian gods, were they perhaps beings that came from other realms through other dimensions? Is that what CERN's about? Are they hoping to open a portal to bring through a whole host of these other beings? I mean, really, when you look at it, some of the old ancient Sumerian stuff, some of the biblical stuff, some of the Nordic stuff, you can tie it all together. You know, you look at the syncretism between all the different cultures, and you can sort of tie together a common thread, and you can find it. You know, there's something very dark going on, and its roots go way, way, way back. The people who control the ancient esoteric knowledge, all the stuff that's hidden in the Vatican, they know exactly what they're doing in bringing this system into being. But where it's going to go, I think, is going to surprise most people. I think we're in for, you know, a pretty rocky time over the next few years, or at least an interesting time anyway. I think things are going to come to a head very, very soon over the next couple of years.
Let's just imagine it does take over. What's that going to look like? I mean, they'll probably just get rid of all people over 50 or something because we're useless. What's the purpose of humans in this system anyway, besides the ultimate absolute control? What are they going to do with us?
Well, when you look at the whole creation of AI and the whole creation of this autonomic system, the virtual reality system that they're talking about, some people refer to it as human 2.0. If we, you know, augment ourselves and hook ourselves up to the grid and merge ourselves with AI, like people like Elon Musk are talking about. But when you look at what's happening to the species biologically, the reduction in sperm count, and you know, the human race is basically in decline at the moment. And what I think they're looking at doing is literally transferring our consciousness into a mainframe, so that we're living in a virtual reality. And if that happened, would we know the difference? You know, you might question whether we're already living in a virtual reality. They're already in a mainframe. It may explain some things like the Mandela effect, some of the glitches that you experience sometimes, a lunar wave. There's all sorts of weird stuff going on. So
it goes even deeper in a way. Each person's in an idioverse, and even if they're witnessing what they think is the same thing, they're witnessing something totally different in their own heads.
From their own perspective.
It could easily be. How would you know? You know, how would you know?
How would we know? How do we know we're not already at this one, this point? But so we're transferred into this another mainframe. We might be already in a mainframe, but we're going to another one, and somebody else. It's like a game. They've captured all the souls. They got all these people, all these beings that, you know, these are just avatars that we're in these bodies. What will we look like? Will we be like the bots in the YouTubes that are arguing with each other? The two bots talk and they go, "Well, I am human. I am alive." Are we going to be doing that same kind of debate?
Maybe we're already doing that. I mean, I sometimes speculate that. I mean, what if, going back to the biblical myths, you know, what if you had that situation where you had you're already trapped in a mainframe, say. Let's say you're already trapped in a mainframe and you knew that all you had to do to get out of the mainframe was to get your emotions right and to experience things right. So you create this simulation, the garden, you put two people in there. All they have to do is learn to love each other, get to know each other, and experience what it's like to be human, and stop messing up, stop messing with things. But they don't. They keep building this you know, beast system. You know, perhaps this is an experiment that's been created to try to find a way out of the matrix, and we just keep messing it up. I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities of what this is. But yeah, I mean, I'm open to suggestion. I really am. I've had so much information come into me lately. Since I did this 5G video about 2 months ago, I put out a video called 5G, the elephant in the living room. And I've had literally a flood. I just opened the floodgates. I've had so much information come to me. I've got so many people to contact, connections to CERN, all sorts of weird stuff going on. There's definitely some weird interdimensional experiment going on with CERN. And there's another experiment that they're running in the United States here that they've started on as well, which is called Lux Zeppelin. And it's an underground experiment. They're sending a particle beam through the Earth about 800 miles through the Earth just to test it out. Yeah, the Lux Zeppelin project. It's a beam that's going from I think it's from Illinois to I can't remember from some Illinois to somewhere. I should look it up. I should have looked it up before we came on.
Does this endanger the tectonic movements of, or does it cause earthquakes or anything?
No, it shouldn't. It's just sending a photon wave basically through the Earth, 800 miles to a receptor in another town, and it should get there like instantaneously. But you've got to wonder, what are they doing? What will it open up? What are they experimenting with? Why the need to do this? And it's all tied in with CERN. The whole thing's all tied together. But even with 5G and everything they're doing, I mean, the 5G grid, I think this is all tied into CERN as well. I think CERN is going to be like a main control center for the whole 5G smart grid, whatever they're doing with it. I mean, when you look at the third strand of DNA and Morgellons and all the things that they're doing with the nanotech, all the stuff we're breathing through chemtrails as well, all this is part of the same thing. It's all tied together. The chemtrails, you've got this Morgellons growing in everybody, which I would suggest is quite possibly leading towards a third strand of DNA. And that third strand of DNA is what will be used to piggyback a carrier wave, which will hook us up to things like the D-Wave quantum computers. That's what I think they're doing. See, Elon Musk is talking about the need to bring in like a neural mesh so that AI won't take over. We won't become enslaved to evil AI. We need to become the AI ourselves. Well, I think they're doing this anyway without telling us. They're just doing it and seeing where it goes. So that's what the chemtrails is all about. I think the whole global warming geoengineering thing is to cover up the fact that they're creating this neural mesh and they're just linking everybody up to it by default. The way Ray Kurzweil talked about, he said soon everything will be smart, rocks, trees, everything. Well, how would they do that? They do that through chemtrails, through this neural mesh, and I think that's what they're doing. I think it's all tied together, CERN, the whole lot, 5G, it's all tied together.
We heard a theory. We've been interviewing secret space program people and super soldiers, and we heard a theory. And I'm open-minded. I just listen to it. I don't know what the answer is. I haven't reached a conclusion. But the theory is that this planet is already taken over by the Draconians. They're terraforming the planet. That's why they're doing the chemtrails, and they're changing it because they have a different environment than us, and they have what they're doing is they're taking human beings and they're kind of Borging them and making them into cyborgs, and we are a resource that they trade and sell slaves, Borg type slaves, meat or food. They package this up. Sex slaves and super soldiers for other worlds, and to domestic slaves on other planets. And I'm listening to this, and there was such great detail, and it kind of makes sense. I've been saying for a long time, this the heating up of the planet doesn't make sense in all this chemtrailing unless there's somebody that wants to have a different environment. And so she basically said that they're going to be taking over this planet, and there'll be no more human life. And there's a couple other whistleblowers that are saying that humans are gone by 2100. So I don't know. I'm just looking at all these different stories, but it doesn't seem logical to what they're doing to our environment, and it is intentional because it doesn't sustain human life. It really isn't. We get more and more people dropping every day, becoming sterile. What do you want to say, Sasha?
Well, just there's another hypothesis that as below, so above, and that things are just exactly the way they are as we experience them, and it's only our value system that makes us think it's junk.
Yeah.
Well, that's possible. I mean, our value system is what allows it all to happen. Like I was saying before, it's our tolerance of wrong behavior. We could change all this anytime we want. Mm-hmm. We know what's going on. Everybody knows what's going on. It doesn't matter who you speak to, even if they're not a conspiracy theorist. They know the world's messed up. They know the government's corrupt. They know that the police are brutal. They know they shouldn't have to do all the things they do, but they do them anyway. Why?
Yeah.
The only reason they do is because if they don't, they'll get banged on the head because they're so disunited from their neighbours. They'll all complain about the society, but then not complain about each other because it makes them feel good to complain about each other. That's how they get their energy, because they're disconnected from source. No one will allow someone else to think differently. We all judge each other by the size of our front doors and what we dress and how we look and, what jewelry we've got on or whatever. It's ridiculous. We've got all these different ways of measuring ourselves up according to each other, and we all complain about the system, but we don't ever unite and just withdraw our support from it because the system only exists because we believe it's real. and we go along with it.
Right.
That's the only thing that holds it up. It's a meme. It's just an idea that somebody had. It isn't even real. It only exists on paper. Even government. What is government? People think, oh, the government will get me. Well, what do you think? This government building is going to pick itself up and march down to your house and stomp on it? The government is just an idea. It's just all these laws written in books, and people in suits go to these big buildings and do what it says in the book. That's all government is. It's just an idea, So,
but I went when U.S. has various invasions of Iraq. I wrote things on Facebook saying, "Soldiers, go return to your bases, drop your weapons, and demand to come home." They didn't do it, and what I'm saying is I don't know how to get from A to B.
I know, that's the problem. How do you do that? How do you get people to do that? Just put down your weapons and go home. What are you doing, you people? Why are you doing it? It's ridiculous. What if they threw a war and nobody came?
Exactly, and it's so obvious.
Apparently, after the Vietnam War, because so many people went the other way and they threw down their weapons, they went back home. Sasha's 77, and I'm 63. I don't know how old you are, Max, but I'm a baby boomer, and I've lived through this, and I've seen us do it. But now we're so apathetic. We're like addicted, and so they had an agenda. Apparently, I read an article where after the Vietnam War, they wanted to change the psychological kind of like mindset around the war in Vietnam. So it's been intentional for the last 20, 30, 40 years to turn us around to patriots. So we're going to defend our country. And there was a point in the 60s where religions were starting to fade. And John Lennon, had this whole thing about we're more popular than the Beatles. And that whole generation was getting behind that.
Jesus, not the Beatles.
I mean, the Jesus, right. And sorry, thanks for correcting me. And so we've seen it happen before, but then after it did happen, and post Nixon and all that stuff, there was an agenda to turn that around, and it seems to be this is like a psychological mind control manipulation of an entire now 2 generations. There's 2-3 generations that have gone through this. So how do we turn it around? Because back then we were going back to nature. We were dropping out of it. We were everybody was upset after World War II. My father had PTSD. Everybody was withdrawn and in shell shock. Do we have to do that again to get back to nature? How do we do this? Any ideas, guys?
The difficult thing now is getting kids to pull their heads out of the tech, I mean, if we were seeing the world in the situation it is now back in the 60s and 70s, there would have been marches in the streets. The colleges would have been on strike, I mean, kids would have been all over it. The students would have been rioting virtually to stop all these bombing campaigns. But now everybody's got their heads in the tech. Everyone's addicted to dopamine because of the little dopamine fixes they get out of clicking icons on their cell phones, So that's what's happened, So, it's up to our generations to try to pull the kids' heads out of the tech and get them back to, understanding what it's like to be human. One of the most important things we can do at the moment is in our everyday lives when we're out and about in the world is to always shop with cash. Do not use credit cards for any transaction out there in the real world, and do not use anything automated. Use only cash and use nothing automated. And get rid of your smartphones. Get rid of these things. This will at least slow the system down. The system has to go digital. It depends entirely on the digitization of currency. People who shop with credit cards in the real world, you go to the supermarket, you buy your groceries. If you use a credit card to pay for it, don't complain about the New World Order because you're supporting it by using your credit card, because that is the New World Order. This digital cashless society is the New World Order. It has to go cashless for this smart grid to come online. Even doing that is one thing that will slow the system down, just refusing to use a credit card and refusing to use anything automated. That really does make a difference. I don't own a credit card. I'm 60 years old. I've never owned a credit card.
Okay, 60. How are they going to get all the cash back? I heard they're going to do some kind of recall that the cash that's out there is going to be useless, no longer. So it's going to go underground.
They could crash the currency. I suspect they will probably get it so bad and get things so bad that they will call about some sort of a reset, and they will say, look, we're going to cancel everybody's debt. All you have to do is switch over to this new blockchain technology. We've got something like the IOTA currency, something like that, which is a digital currency. And people will lap it up because they think it's going to cancel their debt. but they have to switch people over to digital currency. They'll create it some way. There'll be some scam. I mean, it's all a scam anyway. But you need to refuse to use any digital currency and refuse to use anything automated. Just doing that now. And refuse the smart grid. Don't buy anything smart. Don't buy a smartphone. It's not smart for you to own a smartphone. Get an old flip-top phone or something like that if you need a phone at all. And don't shop with credit cards. That will slow it down. And help everybody else to think that way as well. Convince people around you to shop with cash. Don't use anything automated.
Well,
I just was thinking we have seen how the boycott, a form of stop participating, got a decent wage for migrant workers in California. When Wells Fargo was financing the pipeline where the Indians were trying to stop it and the Friends of the Indians were trying to stop it, people started taking their money out of Wells Fargo and putting it in their local community investment groups. I forget what you call those things, but it was effective. Wells Fargo said, well, you know what, we ain't going to finance this thing anymore. So that part of it is being selective. When the French workers said, we're going to put our trucks and block everything for going in and out of Paris for a day just to show you that we mean, because the strike is another form of boycott. Those are things that can work, I think, and I think this is a really good idea. Boycott credit cards.
Yeah, boycott anything that supports the rollout of this smart grid. At least it will buy us time. I mean, it's not a solution, but at least it will buy us time. Because people have to understand what the New World Order is and understand that there's so much stuff going on at the moment to keep them distracted from the stuff that's being rolled out right beneath their feet. The analogy that I use is it's like we're in a house and there's these packs of wild dogs around the house and they're trying to get in, and we're so intent on keeping the windows and the doors barricaded and blocked that we haven't noticed that there's these lice crawling in across the carpet, and they're crawling up our feet and they're crawling over our bodies. And by the time we notice the lice, it's too late. And it was always about the lice. It was never about the dogs. That's the situation that we're in. They're doing everything. That's why there's so much going on at the moment. Trump and left and right paradigm going on here with the politics is just out of control. In every country, it's out of control. The leaders are all screaming at each other all around the world. Merkel is against America now, and Russia, and North Korea, and all this stuff going on in Syria. All of this stuff is all theatre. So much of it is theatre. And underneath it all is this smart grid. They're doing everything they can to distract people from this smart grid. And they're rolling it out at lightning speed with no checks at all. If you look at the talks that Tom Wheeler from the FCC is doing, they're rolling all this out without any safety checks. It's going to do extremely bad things to human biology and all biology. And underneath the 5G smart grid is the fact that it's an active denial system. It's military grade technology, millimeter waves that have been used to disable people in military situations. So it's basically a very, very damaging active denial system. And all of those people out there that eat organic food and everything, it's going to change the cell structure of all of this food as well. This is very, very damaging, and this is being rolled out at lightning speed right now. And the smart grid is the New World Order itself. So we need to have some sort of a focus on this and help people become aware of it, and help people, lead themselves back into some humanity here. All of these things that we're taking for granted as making our lives more convenient are simply leading us into a control grid, which is going to be an absolute nightmare if it comes online. It's going to be very, very difficult to escape from. And the problem is...
I wanted to say that we've many of the developments that I've seen in Phoenix and Las Vegas and so forth, and other municipalities install a smart meter on the house that can tell which electricity is going to which appliance and what time they were turned on and so forth. And they make it mandatory and tax or fine people for not having this in. And it's ultimately going to be mandatory. They're going to try to put it on everybody's resident.
Yeah, it's part of their building codes administration. So they're putting it into the new buildings. So, is there anything we can do? What can we do?
A lot of items.
You need to... Well, you need to start beating them at their own game. This is where I bring things like Israel into it. I mean, it may seem a little bit off topic, but whoever wrote that legislation, which is allowing this device to come onto your home and making it mandatory, you can look at all sorts of studies on these devices which show how damaging they are. And how is his legislation valid anyway if he's making you have no choice to put this on your home? Well, who is this guy? I guarantee this guy signed the AIPAC treaty because you have to sign the AIPAC treaty in order to get funding to be a politician in the United States. The AIPAC treaty is basically a politician pledging allegiance to the state of Israel. Well, the state of Israel is currently in breach of the Fourth Geneva Convention, Article 33, collective punishment against the people of Palestine. It's a state that's carrying out provable war crimes. So here you have a politician who has signed a pledge agreeing to support international war crimes and breaches of the Geneva Convention, thinking he has the authority to enact law in your state. Who is this guy? Can you please show me how you are not a war criminal? If you want me to comply to your legislation, it appears that you're a war criminal under your own law. So you please show me how you are not a war criminal, because I can prove that you are, which means that this legislation is invalid. So get this damn smart meter off my home. I'll smash it off myself with a sledgehammer because you're a war criminal. And if I have to be complying to your law, then you have to comply to your law. And your law says you're a war criminal. Prove me wrong. Try that approach.
So that's a basic Luddite solution. Break the damn things.
Yeah, break it off.
Well, they're putting them
I say to the
everywhere.
guy, listen, there's no point you coming and putting it on my home because I'm standing here with a sledgehammer and I'm going to smash it off as soon as you put it on the wall. And if you're saying that I have to comply to legislation which says I have to have it on my wall, then I would like to press charges against that politician for abuse of office for daring to enact that legislation, because he's a provable war criminal under his own legislation. So let's go and talk about it in court.
Well, that's happening everywhere. We fight that here in Maui. They were trying to get all these smart meters into our homes, and everybody's saying no, no, no. And so far the no's have worked, but they keep getting smarter. And so why are these local politicians coming on board? That's who I can't get. It's like, so why would these people? These are the people that you see at the grocery store, and they're coming on there, and they're signing away the lives of their neighbors and their children, and they're willing in doing it, and they go and vote for this stuff.
Well, they're getting massive, they're getting payouts and getting their pockets greased for doing it. Either that or they've got dirt on them. I mean, if the pedophile ring that runs this world has dirt on most politicians, and that's why it's very difficult to get anything through, because people are told to comply, and they just comply and they toe the party line, because if they don't, they get exposed for being what they are. That's the sad fact of the matter, you know. And most of these people have brownstone operations pulled on them. They've got dirt on them in some way. They've got video of them with a 14-year-old prostitute or something, you know. And that's what they do. I mean, you don't get into a position of power if they don't have dirt on you. It's as simple as that. And this includes all major judges, all Supreme Court judges, major lawyers, all politicians in positions of power, heads of police departments, anybody in any position of power, heads of education departments. All of these people have been compromised in brownstone situations, and they've got dirt on all of them. So the people have to stand up and just take the matter in hand themselves and have these people charged with abuse of office, because they're not even abusing their power. They're in abuse of the office that they hold. You know, the government claims to get its power from the people, and yet the government claims to have the ability to lock you in a cage if you don't comply. Can you lock someone in a cage if they don't comply with your wishes? You don't have the power to do that to anybody. So how can you give the government that power? And how can they claim to have that power if they get it from you if you don't have that power? How can you delegate a power to government that you don't have yourself? You can't. So they don't have that power. They make it up. It's an abuse of office. The whole thing's an abuse of office. You know, and people need to unite with their neighbors and get some respect with the people around them, so that we can stand up together and call these criminals out for what they are. That's the problem, is the world is run by a criminal class. These politicians are criminals. That's what they are. It's a kakistocracy. It's the worst people possible for the job. A criminal class have maneuvered themselves into positions of power, and now they are running the earth into the ground at the expense of everybody else. And if people want to argue that and they need evidence, well, Exhibit A, the earth. Have a look at the place. It's a mess. And every single problem that we face on this earth is a result of politicians who have created legislation which has allowed that situation to come about. All of it. All of the corporate corruption, all the stuff that happens, all the financial slavery, all the wars, all the homelessness, all of it is a result of politicians just greasing palms, getting their own palms greased and paving the way for corruption. That's what it's all about. The politicians do not work for the people, they work for the companies, and their job is to appease the people while the people are screwed over beyond imagination. That's what the politicians do, and it's time we called it. But that's only going to happen if we can respect each other and allow people to think differently, allow people to have different ideas, allow the guy next door to believe it's aliens and the guy next door to believe it's the Jews and the guy next door to believe it's something else. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you believe the Earth's round or flat or a hologram or anything. It doesn't matter. That it's a prison and it's run by criminals. So let's get that focus and remove this criminal cacistocracy from power by the best means possible that we have to do so, and then we can find out what's actually going on. We won't have to have these debates and have all these mysteries. We can put them all to rest because we'll have the freedom to actually find out, you know?
Yeah.
What do you do about the fact that they got the guns?
That's the problem, isn't it? Well, they got the guns, but we got the numbers, brother. And in the United States, hey, you got the guns too. And this place is so well armed. If the people ever did get a little bit of unity, the government would have nowhere to go in the United States. Really, if the people of this country really, were able to develop some respect for each other and allow people to think differently and stand up to face the common foe, which has caused all the problems, they wouldn't even have to use their guns. All they would really have to do is stand up and hold hands and say, hey, we figured you people out, and they're going to run a mile,
I was looking at the pedophile issue, and I grew up in a neighborhood where it was very perverse, and I was born in 1954, and it seemed like that generation coming back from World War II were mind controlled or programmed or implanted or something, because they came back, they were angry, sexually repressed, they got married, had all these children, and they acted out on that generation that was born in the 50s and 60s. And, I was subject to part of it and escaped a lot of it and was aware of it. It was an epidemic, and it's even worse now, 60 years later. And it's like, what is creating that? We're supposed to be this so-called moral Christian society or Jewish or whatever our morality system was that we were growing up with back in the, in the Leave It to Beaver day. But that was a lie. What was really happening was this perverse acting out of repressed sexuality. So, and we're going to be coming up on a break here, but I just wanted to put that out there. I was listening to you talking about morality. Is like, what really is going on that people who so-called love their children, and they'll tell you that to their face, and yet they turn around and they're diddling you or trying to diddle you.
Well, what people don't get to say because they're patriotic and all that sort of stuff is that soldiers are involved in a massive atrocity wave perpetrated on other people and being perpetrated on them too. And they come back with PTSD and they're crazy. They have PTSD and they're acting out in all kinds of criminal ways. War fucks people up.
Oh, you're not allowed to say that.
Well, it does. Absolutely, it does. And one of the first casualties in war is people. I mean, that's one of the first things they harvest is people. You go into these war zones, people are worth a lot of money on the black market in organ sales and stuff. A healthy body is worth about $43 million if you chop it up and sell it as bone marrow and hearts and livers and stuff. And that's on the legal market. So, when you go into these war zones, this is the first thing that you harvest. When they go into Syria, they're going to take over a village. They take all the men, they send them off to work in slave farms. They take the women, they sell them off into prostitution. They get the children, and they sell them off to rich Arabs and to pedophiles in Europe. That's the first thing they do. That's the first casualty in war. This is a valuable resource. People don't realize that. That's why the wars continue so much, because of the massive harvesting of people that goes on. A lot of this is run by DynCorp and the Hillary Clinton Foundation. A lot of the kids and the people are trafficked out through Haiti. A lot of the organs are sold off through Cleveland Clinic. But this is what goes on all the time. And all politicians, like I said, they're all compromised. This pedophile network is there. It's rampant, and it has been rampant for years, centuries, in fact. It's been what's running the world for a very long time. And that's why it's so very difficult to make any change or find any change within the legal system. Even if you get all the information you want, once you get into the court system, they can't expose this, because if they do, it will all lead back to them as well. They'll expose themselves and their friends. So.
Okay. First break. You're listening to Matrix and Revolution in 5 minutes.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
You're back.
Okay, well, welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And once again, I am your host, Janet Lessin, with Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin, producer Thomas Becker, and our special guest, Maxwell Igan. Before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to that donation button on freedomslips.com and make your donation. Whatever you donate, $1, $5, $15, $20, $100, $1 million, whatever you donate will be greatly appreciated, because we do rely on your donations to bring you these shows like ours and all the other 90 co-hosts out there with their different shows on Studio A and B. Mad Painter, Thomas Becker, how are we doing with our fundraising this month?
We got 1,600 and we need 27, so we're still $1,100 shy. And we got, if we get $100 a day, we'll make it.
All right, dig for those pennies, everybody. Sasha, what would you like to say before we bring on Max again?
Okay, we're looking at the system in which we're trapped and what we can do to free ourselves from that system. And particularly, what do you do when you have this kleptocracy or cockytocracy that's running things, and they are so powerful that if they impeach the president, we just get somebody who's worse, Cotton Mather.
Well, that's the thing, that's the thing, what do we do? We've got to understand that what's holding the system up is our compliance to the system, if we were to all stay home, I'd like to see a whole global strike. I'd like to see everybody just refuse to comply. I've been trying to encourage a day of non-compliance, like the 15th of every month. Just don't spend any money, don't use your credit cards, don't go to work, just stay home. 15th of every month.
That's a great idea.
Have a
I love it, yes.
And see if we can build it up. So once we get the numbers, you can get it happening. Maybe, okay, well, now that we've got the numbers, let's make it last for 3 days or 4 days or 5 days. Let's just go on strike and down tools, and say we want change. It's as simple as that. Well, we're taking the world in a different direction now. We invite you to come with us, but we're not doing this anymore, But
beautiful, like Start on Earth Day.
Something that's going to inspire the people and let them realize that there is solidarity. There are people who agree with them. There are people who want to make a difference and who want to get involved. And just starting off by, like, you imagine if no one spent money for a day. You imagine people standing at Wall Street looking up at the big screens waiting for the numbers to change and nothing changes. They'd all have meltdowns, But it'd be great to just organize something like that. But you need something that people can get involved in where they are. The whole Occupy Wall Street movement, it had a bright idea at its base, but they didn't have any direction. They don't need to occupy Wall Street. We already occupy the entire earth. We just don't occupy ourselves. So we need to occupy ourselves and stand in that and say, well, we're going to refuse to comply with this system anymore, That would really make a difference. So, It'd
be good to, we had a movement going for a while there on the internet called World Orgasm Day, and so you could do one day a month where you would get into a blissful state where you would go, spiritual. You'd make love. You'd go out in nature. You'd look at sundown. Whatever is your orgasm, what makes your life orgastic. So not only would you not comply with spending money, but you do things that are taking you on the inward journey or the journey with your beloved or family or friends or something more spiritual and connected. Connected to each other.
Anything that'll pull you away from this system and inspire the people around you, I always think about things like community gardens, anything you're doing to, if you're baking a cake, bake an extra one and go and get to know your neighbors next door. Just get to know people, become people's friends, so that, we can all stand up together against this system, Then you can share your political views and things with people, but you can't do it if you're not friends with them. They won't listen to you. You have to become friends with people first and realize that people all think differently to each other. It's okay. But we're all in a state of hardship. We're all in a state of scarcity, and we're all facing a common foe, which is this criminal system. That word you were searching for before is kakistocracy. Kakistocracy from the Baltic kaka, of course, shit. So ruled by the shit people. Kakistocracy. It's actually a real word. Was taken out of the dictionary about 100 years ago. It means governance by the worst elements of society who govern entirely in their own interests to the permanent detriment of all other classes. That is what
it's a kleptocracy. Is. It's the same thing. It's a kleptocracy.
Well, yeah, but it's a kakistocracy. It's ruled by the shit people. It's ruled by the worst elements of society. And it's an actual word. It is an actual word. You'll find it in old dictionaries, but you won't find it in any new ones. And it does directly come from the Baltic kaka, which, as you know what that refers to. So that's what the word means. And you can see why they took it out of the dictionary, because that's exactly what we've got.
Well, before the break, I was thinking maybe that's why they say the biblical sense, go forth and be fruitful and multiply, because they seem to want to stop birth control, stop abortions. So we're just supposed to reproduce, so we have the prime meat or the prime, product for whoever's buying these resources or ending up with these resources. The human
they want to serve humanity.
They want to serve humanity. Yeah, when you look at it from this different perspective, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, we're a product. They want the best ones, so they're just going to kill off the old ones. But what they have in the UFO community, Max, is that you can't escape it, because if you get old, they have what's called the 20 and back program. Now they have the ability to regress us back to our prime. So you can't even retire. You might go through 60 years of serving in the secret space program. They regress you. They give you a few years to, maybe hang out and have a little bit of fun. But you could be 99 years old and they regress you back to, 20, and you're back in the secret space program. This is how bizarre it possibly could be. I know that you're going from a realist point of view, but I look at it all and I go, well, it just kind of makes more sense than what we're getting, because coming from, going up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s with that reality that we were presented, all these, like you were talking about television and movies, and we had this reality presented to us about how life was and what's the meaning of it and what's important. And then all of a sudden we're in this Orwellian 1984 vision of existence, and it's there's a television series that was just out called The Handmaid's Tale, and it's like, holy crap, that's where we're heading, where the planet is taken over by religious fanatics, and women are basically owned again, property, and their only value is the children they can pop out of them. Otherwise, they send them off to the camps and they just work themselves to death. Okay, someone else talk. I'm done. Sasha,
well, they put everything out there on the TV shows and on the movies to let you know what they're doing. They put it all out there. They've got to put it out there so that we see it and we comply with it. That's the thing. It's the thing they have to do. They have to let us know. It has to be by consent, all this stuff they're doing, or it doesn't work. That's what I mean. The whole system only functions because we go along with it. If we remove support from it, then the system collapses. It's as simple as that. That's why I encourage everyone to just stop complying with it and pull support from it in every way they can. If people just go back to using cash, it's going to really slow things down. And the problem is that the kids that are starting school now, when they come out of school, they're not going to have any reference point for freedom. Things are changing so quickly now that in another 10 or 15 years, the kids will have absolutely no reference point for what the world once was like. Even now, like we were saying earlier, it's very difficult for people our age to even remember the world without the internet. I mean, I can remember what it was like. It was certainly a lot harder to do things than what it is now. The internet's been a wonderful gift to us in many ways, but also it's been used to track the whole human experience and map the entire human terrain. And I think this is why they did things like made 9/11 so obvious. I mean, 9/11 was so obviously staged. They could have done that a lot, but they didn't. Why? Because they wanted to see who was awake. They wanted to find out where all the dissidents were, who was going to be speaking up, who was going to be doing this. Then they put together Facebook together, so now they can track everybody's social networks. They know where all the dissidents are. They know where everybody is. They're tracking everybody through their smartphones and through their computers, and now they're gradually squeezing the truth out. They're gradually brushing it away, brushing it under the carpet. I had 5,000 subscribers deleted from my YouTube channel day before yesterday. 5,000.
Oh, wow.
I wake up in the morning and
What
I had
happened?
5,000 less subscribers than what I had the day before. This is what they do. They just do it. They just brush the truth aside. I had one woman comment that she's had to subscribe to my channel 14 times in one day. You know, so
Yeah, they're taking over things.
they just gradually brush it under the carpet. That's what they're doing. They've demonetized everybody's YouTube accounts. I knew they would. I told people not even to bother monetizing. I said it's a trap. They want you to monetize your
Right.
account so they know exactly who you are. So now they've got your YouTube account hooked up to your bank account so they know who you are. And pretty soon they'll demonetize it anyway. All you guys are going to be giving up your day jobs because you're making such a good income from YouTube, and then they're going to pull the rug out from under you. And then they did. I never even monetized my account. I've never made 1 cent from YouTube. I just never went down that path. I didn't want to give them any of my personal details. And I knew they were going to pull the rug out from under it anyway. So there's now a lot of people that have become pretty dependent upon that and have kind of burned a lot of bridges in the real world probably by quitting their jobs or whatever. Now they've had the rug pulled out from underneath them. And you know, when they did that as well, when they monetized YouTube, suddenly it became all about sensationalism. You know, people, you know, the independent media became, you know, very reminiscent of the mainstream media. People were sensationalizing their headlines. It all became about clicks and views and all this sort of stuff because they want that money check at the end of the month, you know. So, you know, we kind of got ourselves enslaved and dependent upon the economic model we were all speaking out against and trying to defeat. Suddenly it infiltrated into the truth movement, and that's what happened to a lot of YouTubers. And they're sort of paying the price for it now. But
Well, aren't they cutting off their nose to spite their face? If people stop tuning into YouTube and working it, then you're going to have less and less subscribers, and they'll have less to sell. You know, they're making their money by selling advertisements on these YouTubes, and if they remove the motivation for people to sit there and work at home and do the YouTubes, then they're going to lose some of their basis of. We're working for the internet.
Well, it's through the whole fake news meme they've been able to do it. You know, the whole Pizzagate fake news thing, which was so predictable. That's what that was leading to. That's why they had to focus on the pizza store. You know, they managed to expose global pedophilia and then shift the attention to a small business and create a whole fake news meme and shut down the independent media to a large degree. And I called that as well. And just before it happened, I said, stop focusing on the pizza store. They're gonna use it against us, and they did. And the whole thing's been very predictable. So, I mean, they can still do their advertising, but it's just not truther channels. They just put up their own undesirable content for advertisers, and people just don't get money for their clips.
Great.
But like I said, I never did anyway. I never monetized my account anyway because I could see where it was going to go.
I monetized mine, but I've never got a single penny. I don't know what happened. I didn't quite figure it out, and it was it was just a curiosity because I heard you could monetize it. But okay, so they're gonna eliminate all these ways for everybody to make living, and what are we all gonna be living on the street? And then they're forcing us back to nature, or else we're gonna be dead. I understand what you're saying, and it's happening, but it seems illogical. Yeah.
Well, they're forcing us into a situation where we have to comply with the system or go out and fend for ourselves, basically. And people that want to go off grid, I mean, yeah, the opportunity will be there, but it's going to be really off grid, like really off grid, because you're not going to be able to purchase anything at all if you don't have a card or it's not digital. That's just the way it's going to go in the first world, anyway. So I might live in the third world most of the time. I spend most of my time.
How long do you think it'll take before that goes into place? And you're talking about this as 5G. What is that? What is 5G? I mean, I have a 4G phone. Is that something?
It's the fifth generation, the new generation of technology, and 5G is not a natural. It's not a natural evolution from 4G. It's gone 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G. Fourth generation communication. Now the fifth generation communication is a whole new ball game. It's all millimeter wave technology, military grade technology. So it's basically an active denial system. Millimeter waves will penetrate virtually everything. They'll penetrate your skin. 90% of the signal will penetrate your skin and your body. So we'll see a rise in skin cancer. It can see through walls. It can be used to disable people. It can be used for microwave systems like DARPA, active denial systems, microwave cannons. This is all 5G technology. It can be used for lethal capabilities. So even bringing in, so it's going to be damaging to biology anyway, just by having this in place. But the fact that it can be weaponized is quite freaky. Underlying that is the fact that it can be weaponized. So, of course, because you've got this system that can be weaponized, you're going to have to automate response to hacking and response to virus infection, because you can't have Russia coming in and hacking into your 5G system and microwaving LA. That's not going to be good. So you have to have all response automated. So what you really see is the system, the internet itself, having its own immune system constructed for it. Basically, it's got to be able to, an automated response to any type of viral infection or hacking or anything like that. And you need this if you're going to have a 5G system in place. So basically, you're giving control of a weapon system to the internet itself. And this is not a good thing. This is not a good idea to be doing. The whole 5G system, it's going to be so all-encompassing. It's going to reach all areas of the country. It's being sold to us under the guise of faster downloads. But the fact that underlying it is a weapon system, underlying it is an incredible potential for abuse. And it's going to enable the Internet of Things, which is going to be the smart grid that everything will be hooked up to, which has to have a cashless society in order to run. So that's where the glue is. That's why I keep going back to that and always shop with cash, because that at least will slow it down while we're trying to find a way out of this.
Well, they've had this for a long time if they're coming out with it now for the public, because they always have things 20, 30, 40 years in advance. So they've been using it somewhere all along. So they have to know the side effects of using this type of system wherever they're using it on a military base. I was located on Johnson Atoll one time, which is a military base 800 miles southwest of Hawaii. And, there was these people showing me the technology back then that they could see through walls, hear everything that you say, and see everything. So, and that was back in the 90s. So they probably had this, and they probably have information on what it actually does to people. So now they're bringing it out. When is the expected release of this 5G system across is it going to be city by city or all at once?
Well, they're rolling it out now. They're expecting deployment to start in late 2017. So things are starting already. They expect it to begin wide range deployment in 2018, and they want it to be fully online everywhere by 2020. And there's also a paper put out by you what?
Yeah, we're gonna start dying in mass because it's harmful for all life. And
dying in mass. You won't start just dropping off like flies, but you're going to see massive rises in skin cancer. You'll probably see all sorts of mental issues happening. But also there's a white paper that was put out by the White House last year called A Federal Vision for Future Computing and the Nanotechnology Grand Challenge. And you can read that paper. You'll find a link to it on my website on the homepage. And that paper outlines a plan to hand control of everything, our entire infrastructure, over to a fully autonomic system within 15 years, like what I'm saying. Hand the whole thing over to AI 15 years. So that's according to their own papers. And they're actually very much ahead of schedule at the moment. They've got like a 5-year goal and a 10-year goal and a 15-year goal. And they're only like about 1 year or 18 months into the plan, and they're already at about year 8 of their goals. So this is according to all their own paper and all their own stuff. So that's the way it's going. It's being handed over to a completely smart system, and it will be fully autonomic by 2025 is what they want to do by their own plans. So yeah, and like I said, they're ahead of schedule. So you're looking at the 5G rollout beginning in earnest next year to be pretty well everywhere by 2020 and to be fully autonomic by 2025.
Can they be maybe bioengineering and changing genetically those people they want to survive, and just everybody else is sacrificed?
Well, it's possible. It's possible that they're able to do it through computer monitors. It's possible. anything is possible, really. They could be selective people that they wish to bring into the system. They might want to do it to everybody. I mean, it's mainly Western countries that it's affecting, mainly the countries that are undergoing chemtrails and stuff like that it's affecting. So, but yeah, I mean, it's quite possible. They could be selective people that are involved. Things like the Mandela effect are very interesting. You know, how this affects some people but doesn't affect others. You've got to wonder whether this was a pulse that was put out through computer monitors or something like that. So, you know, all sorts of possibilities.
Sasha, okay. I was going to say something else. So it could be bioengineering. I mean, I'm just looking at it logically. So they're going to be doing this system and they're rolling it out, and it's going to be in by 2025. And they have it under this guise that it's going to be beneficial for all of humanity. It's a good thing. But I'm just imagining that suddenly all these people start dying and this information is out about it. And aren't people going to connect two and two and go, well, you're killing grandma, you're killing my kid, and be some kind of uprising? What do you think's going to happen when this starts happening, and when it's beyond random probability that it's obvious to everybody that there's something going on and it can be connected to this 5G network? What do you think will happen?
Well, it could be some sort of an uprising. There might be. I mean, what that will look like is the question. You know, a violent uprising I don't think would be a good thing. I mean, it might get to a point where people have to defend themselves, but I don't think they're really pushing for a violent uprising. I think they're really pushing for race wars and race riots, everything we just saw in Charlottesville. I think they're really pushing for that. They want violence on the streets. So, you know, I think it would be a bad idea to give it to them. I think that the best thing we could do would be to just not comply with the system. You know, if everybody stayed home, there's nothing they can do. There's absolutely nothing they can do if the whole world decides to just go on strike. There's nothing they can do, you know. So,
right.
What would be a good day for the first day?
Wall Street. We already occupy the whole world. We just don't occupy ourselves, like I said.
Right.
How much time do you think it would get to start a movement and select a day like Earth Day or whatever is in the time frame that it would take to get a large following and publicize this properly? What do you think is a good time to start?
Well, yeah, now is a good time to start. Any time's a good time to start. It's just getting the message out to enough people. You know, you need having the funding to be able to publicize it heavily enough is the problem. You know, unfortunately, that's what you need is publicity. You know, that's the most valuable resource there is people's attention, you know. It's just how to get that attention.
So what's going on with Trump and the Korean Kim Jong-un, whatever his name, Kim Jong-un? And they have this bomb they said is the one that takes down all the technology. What's it called? EMF bomb? That they're supposed to be able to deliver. I was reading an article today. It said
E-bomb.
The E-bomb could kill 9 out of 10 Americans, and it's coming soon.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all that?
I think it's
Max?
theatre for the masses. I think it's absolute theatre for the masses. I mean, E-bomb, what E-bomb? How could this kill 9 out of 10 Americans? What is it? I mean, you know, and then now North Korea threatening Guam. What, this tiny little speck in the middle of the ocean? Yeah, I can see that's a real reason. You know, it's theatre for the masses. I mean, Kim Jong-un, he's just playing his role. He's just playing his bit. The chances of North Korea dropping a nuclear bomb on the United States are slim to zero. I mean, the first country that does anything like that is going to get stomped on by the rest of the world anyway. So why would you do it? There's this stupid little country there right next to China. And of course, if the United States starts threatening North Korea, it's right next to China. Who do you think is going to come to the party? All they're doing is threatening China, basically, by threatening North Korea. And that's a really stupid thing to do. And it's just to put the fear into the minds of the people, just to put the fear of war into the minds of the people. There won't be nuclear war. Nuclear war stops all business, and the world is run by business. So, you know.
That's what I said. We get all our stuff from China now. We're not going to want to stop trading and commerce. The whole planet's too greedy to stop all that. World War III would get in the way of, their cash flow.
Unless they were selling arms.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they'd have to shift over to that pretty rapidly. And right now they're selling stuff on Amazon. They're making too much money on Amazon. Look at it. If you buy anything from Amazon, it's coming from China, Pakistan. It's coming from another country. Very few things are produced.
So we're their customers.
States. We're their customers, and you don't kill your customers because you kill yourself. You stop having your cash flow for your own people. So that always sounds logical. Well, what is this Trump guy? I'm just looking at it. I was listening to a show you did around when he got in office, and then one later. I didn't get to listen to everything because I had to take a little sample of everything you were saying. This whole Trump thing seems like some kind of Illuminati game they're playing with humanity, and they do with all their world leaders and political leaders. And somewhere somebody decided that let's put Trump in play. It's kind of like let's put the modern day Hitler in play, and some character that is so bizarre that every day he gets everybody paying attention to him. Look at me, I've got the whole focused on me. What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, look, theatre for the masses. Like I said, I'll be surprised if he lasts his first term. I mean, he might even quit with what's going on with Bannon and everything at the moment. Who knows? But he's just causing so much of a circus. It's ridiculous. And I think so much of it is theatre, just to keep people distracted from what's being rolled out underneath them. I don't think he's the people's president at all, like a lot of people think he was. I mean, anybody who voted for him should be massively disappointed by now. I'd be surprised if they're not. But I'd be surprised if he lasts his first term. I still don't think he will. I don't think he was ever meant to.
So then what will happen?
We'll have this awful man Pence in.
Yeah, we'll have Pence. Have Pence there with this whole military government, and they'll just continue to push the theatre of war. I mean, all Trump has done is escalate the conflict in the Middle East. He's just played the same agenda and pretended to give people appeasement at home, but he hasn't really. I mean, he's done little things to appease people, but nothing really. He hasn't kept any of his promises. He's going to abrogate the situation overseas. The treaty with Iran.
What do you think that would do? Do you think he's going to abrogate the nuclear agreement with Iran?
Look, I don't know. I hope not.
That's what he's threatened, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, but he's threatened to do a lot of things. He hasn't done a lot, but he's threatened to do a lot. So it's anybody's guess, really. I mean, the people would like that, I think. I mean, it would be good for his critics. They'd love that if he did that. But, hopefully he won't. Hopefully he'll see reason. And I mean, there's enough posturing going on with North Korea and everything at the moment that maybe he doesn't have to go that far. Maybe he can keep him busy with all that.
So you're going around the world. You were talking about one of your shows that you just kind of like throw caution to the. What was that you said? You just I forget what you said. Throw something to the wind and see where it lands. Or I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly what you said.
Well, no, I've got this saying that if you throw yourself to the wind, you can ride it. And that's kind of what I do. Yeah, I'm traveling at the moment. I'm going right around the world. I'll be traveling until probably close to the end of next year. I'll be traveling. I've got to go back to Europe now, and then I've got to go over to Hawaii, then back to Peru, and I'll be in Peru probably until September or October next year. So, yeah, I've got a lot of traveling to do, a lot of speaking engagements to do. It's pretty busy, pretty full on. It gets very tiring, but it needs to be done. You reach a lot of people, and it needs to be done. So that's what I do. Hopefully we'll make some sort of a difference. I mean, I am seeing lots of people waking up all around the world. Everywhere I go, I'm seeing pockets of resistance. A lot of people are getting it now. A lot of people, they know there's a problem. It's just trying to find the way out. And people are realizing that the way out is, it's us holding the system up. That is really the way out, is for us to stop complying with it. So,
Right. So when you travel, do you do like conferences, PowerPoint presentations? How do you reach people? What's the most effective way to get this out to them?
Usually I go conferences and PowerPoint presentations, but I do workshops. I'll do private gatherings. I'll do conferences. I'll do just whatever I can, whatever's going to reach more people, whatever's going to make a difference. I'm just happy to do it. I do lots of Kambo ceremonies and lots of talks with the Kambo ceremonies and stuff like that. Even with what I'm doing next month, I've got to go over to England, and this is just kind of a throw together talk. Someone just heard I was going to be in Holland, so they've put together a day in the UK just to get this 5G information out to people, because that's a pretty important issue, this smart grid and all of this. So, I mean, that is something that we can focus on now, that everybody can focus on, because it's something that it affects their lives on the ground, it affects their neighbors, it affects everybody you know, and it's something that a lot of people can identify with, the fact that this 5G radiation is going to affect them, and the Internet of Things is going to affect them. So it's been pretty successful, actually, using that as a focal point for people and using it as something that people can pay attention on and focus on. Everybody can see it, that it's going to affect them.
What do you mean by the Internet of Things? Can you explain that to our listeners?
Well, the Internet of Things is like they want everything to be microchipped. Everything will be part of the Internet. They're talking about everything from pill bottles to plant waters. You're going to a supermarket and everything in the supermarket is microchipped. And at that point, you don't need cash or anything. You don't even need to talk to a checkout operator. You can just walk into the supermarket. You can pick up what you want from your shelf, put it in a bag, and then walk out the door, and it'll all be deducted from your account as you walk out the door. You'll be detected as you walk in the shop. Everything you pick up will be detected, and it will all be automatically deducted from your account as you leave the store. And this will also bring into things like self-driving cars, trackable cars, cars that can be disabled at whim through the 5G system. Everything will be connected to everything else. Everything will be tracked. Everything will be connected to the Internet. That's what it's about. And as you can go and look up the FCC and Tom Wheeler's speech on the Internet of Things. This is what he's talking about under his own guidelines. So it's basically about total surveillance of absolutely everything, from everything on the supermarket shelf. Like I said, pill bottles to plant waters. Everything will be tracked. Your cars, your vehicles, all your movements through your mobile phone. Everything will be tracked. Every transaction you perform will be tracked. So if you're someone that might perform massage for someone or do tarot for someone, and someone gives you $20 for doing a tarot reading, well, the only way they're going to be able to transfer that money to you will be digitally, and the government will get a tax on that now. So everything, and even their tarot cards will have microchips in them anyway. So, and it gets to the point where you'll know, it'll measure your fridge. It'll know you're opening your fridge. It'll know each time you use your fridge, you'll be paid per use. Pay per use every time you switch on your TV or use any electrical appliance, it'll be pay per use. So that's where the Internet of Things is going to. It's a total surveillance grid, total tracking of everything and everybody.
So if you don't have any jobs anymore, though, how are people going to get money? We're talking about the global economic reset and the basic minimum needs economy, giving everybody a basic minimum wage.
It'll have to be something like that. If it gets to the point where most of the main jobs are gone, it'll be a welfare state. It'll have to be, and you'll get your basic minimum wage, and that'll be it. I mean, what else can you get? I mean, they're going to have to supply a wage for people. If there's no wage, they can go and earn. And that's what it's going to be, and there's not going to be any way around it. So, yeah, that's where we're heading, and that's what the Internet of Things will all be about. That's where we're going. But people still can stop it. We still can turn it around if people are aware that it's happening. That's the thing, and it's the smart grid is the problem. That's what people have to focus on. This is so many people, wanting to blame someone, blame the Rothschilds or the Jews or the Archons or whatever, and think that if we arrest these people or expose these people, it's going to change things. But really, it's not. We've got to realize that it's the grid itself. Like I said, you can pull down the government, put anybody you want in place. If the grid is still in place, then we're still heading in the same direction. It's the smart grid is the problem. So we've got to find every method we can to pull away from that.
Okay, Sasha wants to ask something, and then I want to say
No,
something.
it was just a little slogan like boycott the bosses and break the boxes.
Break the
That's
boxes.
good.
Yeah, that means the phone and the smart boxes. Boycott the bosses and break the boxes.
Yeah. Well, I was sitting in line waiting for them to change my smartphone to another smartphone, and I was sitting there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, where all this process was going on, and I was bored because I was looking for my smartphone to sit there and entertain myself. So it's like an addiction. It reminds me of, I like chocolate, so I have an addiction for chocolate. I'm not into drugs or alcohol, but I have an addiction. So we all have addictions, and this use of these little boxes that we is like an addiction. So we're going to have to. It's best to end an addiction by replacing with something. What can we do in this world to motivate us
Talk to people.
Replace it with people. Replace it with gardens. And it is an addiction because it's the dopamine. Every time you click an icon on your computer, or you click an icon on your phone, and a little thing happens, it releases dopamine in your brain. It gives you a little rush of pleasure whenever you do these things. So, giving these things to kids, you notice when you give a child an iPad or something, it gets fixated on it very quickly. If you take it away, then the child will be screaming, and won't shut up again until you give it the iPad back, because it is addicted to the dopamine. It's the pleasure of the dopamine. So what we're doing is we're basically promoting drug addiction in children, only the drug is being produced in our own body. But that's what it is. It's a dopamine addiction. That's what people's tech addiction is. It's quite literally a dopamine addiction. So it's a freaky thing,
Some people don't care, though. They just don't want anything to do with it, and they're not really addicted to it. Like, I don't watch television. I've spent the last 20 years not watching television, but some people, that's all they can do is get home. And so I wonder what makes that happen within individuals, that some are inclined to go get addicted to these things and some are not. Like, any ideas? What makes one want to do that and another one just doesn't care? And
well,
are you
a lot
still
of
there?
it. Yeah, a lot of it is
Yeah,
like with television, it's alpha waves. People are, it's the alpha wave addiction. It's that sort of trance state they get into, but it's kind of different with the tech. The tech is more of a dopamine addiction. Like I said, you'll find a lot of people that don't watch television still like to get onto their computer and like to click on their smartphone and like to do all that because that's dopamine. It's a different thing. The TV will kind of lull you into a dreamlike state, like an alpha state, and that's kind of like a trance-like state, and people like that. But it's not. It's different to tech addiction. It's different to dopamine addiction.
So what do you do? What's your life like?
My life is
Are you
work,
avoiding
darling.
these things? Or are you?
My life is work. I mean, I spend a lot of time on the computer because I'm always doing things like this, interviews and making films and stuff like that. But I mean, I spend a lot of time traveling as well and serving medicine. I spend a lot of time in meditation. I spend a lot of time in the jungle. So, it's a pretty busy life. I don't get a lot of time to myself, unfortunately. But I'm looking for that soon. I'm hopefully going to get home to Australia soon and have a little bit of time off. So I haven't had any time off for quite a while. I'm looking forward to that one.
Very interesting. So go ahead, Sash, your turn. Ask a question.
Okay. I guess I'm wondering about the medicine you talked about, whether that's a dopamine releaser.
No, the Cambo, mainly the Cambo. But I do live on an ayahuasca retreat in Peru. I have a lot of people come through there, and I don't actually serve the medicine or anything, but I live there on the retreat. I haven't actually drank for quite a while. But it's kind of good living there and having so many people come through and helping them deal with their stuff. I have a lot of people there that actually know me, and that's kind of good. But mainly it's the Cambo medicine that I've been serving around the world when I've been traveling. But mainly I've been traveling. I've just done so much traveling in the last couple of years. I'm really looking forward to getting home to Australia and having some time off. I want to work. I've got 2 films I'm working on. One of them is about the Amazon, and another one is part 2 of the last film I made, which was called Transformation, and this is called Cacistocracy. That word again, and I want to make a film on that and just help people, see what's coming. Help people realize that there's a train coming and hopefully encourage them to collectively step off the tracks, I mean, that's what I've been doing ever since I started this show, is trying to help people step off the tracks and try to create some sort of unity in people. There's been so much division in this movement, so many people fixated on their own rabbit holes and not allowing other people to think differently is one of the hugest problems that we face. Divide and conquer has been one of the most effective strategies that's ever been used against us. And I think it's very, very important we recognize that. And like I said, allow people to think differently and just, focus on the main cause of the problems, which is the control grid itself,
Well, the race war thing is, it seems to me there's a potential for that to backfire, where people are starting to embrace diversity and allow that people to be individuals, to be, gay, bi, trans, and all those different gender possibilities and race combinations. Back when I was a child, everything was black and white, but now people are very diverse, and it's not uncommon for a family to have many generations of, different races in their children and grandchildren.
Well, yeah,
so I
that's
think
why
in a way that is, go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's why they try to push all of this stuff like we saw the violence with the car and all that. I mean, the way they turned it into a huge riot when it didn't have to be. This is all done by design just to keep people against each other. As soon as anyone tries to do anything, normal or peaceful or have just a free speech rally or whatever, they'll make sure they turn it into something violent, make sure they play it the way they want to create more and more division amongst the people, because the people are coming together. So they're trying to really stop that. That's exactly why we saw the car drive through the people,
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask Thomas, a mad painter. You're sitting there quietly. Any thoughts, comments, questions? Are you there? He may have stepped away.
No,
Okay.
I was on mute is all. I find everything that he's talking about extremely fascinating myself. I mean, I'm just sitting here learning.
Okay. Any questions? Any thoughts?
No, not really. I mean, he's doing great. I've talked to Max before. I've had him on a show. I think he's awesome.
Yeah, great, Max. Okay,
yeah,
we've done
a lot of shows together. I've done a lot of shows on this station. It's
wonderful.
It's good to be back on again.
Well, we have another 15 minutes or so. What would you like us to cover for our audience here? What do they need to know? What can we do?
Well, look, the 5G, I think, is the most important thing that people should be focusing on, this smart grid and this Internet of Things. Like I said, helping people become aware of it, always shopping with cash and doing everything they can to pull away from the smart grid and the automated system. And, creating noise about it, having public meetings, getting involved with your politicians. Like I said before, all these people are war criminals. They got no right to be bringing this legislation online anyway, when everything they do is in breach of their own legislation. So, people have to start taking the bull by the horns and stand up for themselves a little bit. This is what I've been trying to encourage. Now, so many people in this movement are, waiting for someone to come along with a game plan to lead them to safety. Everyone says, you don't like the government. Well, what's your plan for new government? What's your game plan to lead us to safety? But, if people are not prepared to participate and do it themselves, then, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It doesn't matter who you vote in or vote out. It's our compliance to the system. And it doesn't matter what sort of system anyone brings online, even with things like Michael Tellinger and the Ubuntu system, which is a great idea. But if we go to that, if people still tolerate wrong behavior and they're still tolerating this smart system, then it's not going to matter. We're going to end up exactly back where we are now. We've got to realize what the grid is, what the control grid is, and what's holding it up, which is us. And we've got to realize that there's no leaders coming along. No one can come along with a game plan to lead you to safety if you're not willing to comply yourself and not willing to put it into action yourself. All we have to do is stop complying with the system, pull our support away from it, and the system crashes, And that's the only game plan that we need. That's the only thing that's going to stop it. Nobody else can stop it. Any plan that anybody has, I mean, how are they going to do it? What's it going to do if the system is still there, if the smart grid's still there and we're still using all the tech, That's the problem. So this is what I'm trying to encourage with people, is to realize that they have to get involved themselves. No one is going to come along and lead you to safety if you're not prepared to get involved yourself, and we're holding it up. The whole thing is being held up by us. That's the whole issue. And it's really frustrating that people can't see that so many people will look at this and they'll complain about it and they'll wave and shake their fist about it, but they won't withdraw support from it. Like I said, I'm 60 years old. I don't own a credit card. I never have. I never will. I just won't support that system. I go into shops now and people say, well, why don't you use a credit card? And I say, well, because I won't support organised crime. People say, why don't you vote? I say, because I refuse to support organised crime. I just won't do it.
How do you buy a plane ticket? How do you get a plane ticket?
Well, I buy cash, or I've got a debit card. I can put money into the account and I can buy it online. That's the only time I'll ever use a card is to buy a plane ticket online with a debit card. But out in the real world, shopping in the real world, I won't go to a shop and shop with a card. I've never bought anything from a shop in the real world with a card. The only thing I've ever bought with my debit card is plane tickets, and I've got to put money in that account in order to use that card, And if I'm on an airline and I can't buy food or anything on the line without a card, then I don't eat. I mean, I don't eat airline food anyway. But I just will not use any of their smart system. I just will not shop with a credit card. I've gone into supermarkets and loaded up trolleys and tried to pay with cash and been quite shocked when they wouldn't let me, and they've had to, unload the trolley and put it all back on the shelves because I will not shop with a credit card. And I do that just to try to wake them up. So, when you're in the real world, shop with real world things and use real world things. Don't use their smart system,
Right. Yeah, we're still able to use cash. How will we know when the 5G is in our lives? I mean, will they just put it in our energy grid?
Yeah, it's coming online now. It's coming online now. Your phone will just suddenly say 5G, and the smart meters and all this will start coming into place in all around your community, and things will start getting smart. They'll be starting to phase cash out of everywhere you go. The more you don't shop with cash, the quicker the 5G grid will come online. The more you go to little shops and stuff and always shop with cash, then the slower it's going to be for it to come online. So it will depend on us how quickly it comes online. If people refuse to comply with it, then it can't come online. But unless they do that, then it's absolutely going to come online, and it'll be happening within the next 2 to 3 years. Or over the next 3 years, it'll be rolled out.
I guess one of the things is what do we do with the perps, besides denying them any authority, which they've seized by illegal use of power, but basically some kind of truth and reconciliation process. There's going to be a lot of people that will want to do eye for an eye and be out for their heads.
Well, that's the thing. They will.
What do you see happening?
Well, personally, I don't really care. I mean, I think they're all misguided. I don't really seek revenge against anyone. I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel differently and do seek revenge, but I don't. I'm not revenge motivated. I don't really want to hurt them. I just want them to stop hurting other people.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't really care. I mean, if they want to have their war, I'm a firm believer. Get all the leaders and give them all a hammer and put them all on Christmas Island, and they can have their war. But I don't want to be involved, and I don't see the reason for them to be involved. I mean, I'd invite them to come with us. We'd like to take the human race in a different direction now, and we invite you all to come along. If you want to continue having wars, well, here's an island, go and have your war, but leave us alone. So, I mean, I'm just not a vengeful person. I'm sure others feel differently, and that's their business, that's their karma. I'm sure things will go very badly for the leaders if it ever gets a chance where people do rise up. I think things will go very, very terribly for them. But I personally don't seek any revenge against anyone. I think a lot of the stuff that we're facing in the world is due to people's compliance anyway. I think that if people refuse to comply and simply stood up and overturned the tables of the money changers like someone famous in history did, then we wouldn't have this problem. So people kind of get what they deserve because people won't stand up for themselves. And I hate to say that, but people should stand up for themselves. They really should stand up to this system. We know what's going on. We know how corrupt it is, and we see it all right in front of our faces, but we still don't do anything about it, and we expect someone else to come along and save us. Well, I think that's a bit of a cop-out. I think that if we were to stand up for ourselves, regardless of the consequences, no stake in the outcome. I don't have a stake in the outcome of anything I do. If they don't like what I'm doing, well, hey, kill me. I don't care. I'll come back next time. I've had a great life anyway. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not going to take a backward step to you or do what you tell me to do just because I'm scared of death. I'm scared of death,
Right.
I don't have to do any of this stuff. I never have. I've never voted. I've never complied with this system. I've never filled out a tax form. I've never done any of that stuff. I've just lived on the outside of society for my whole life. So, I mean, I can do it. Other people can do it. I don't know why people comply with this system. I really don't. I mean, the only thing that I've got that involves me in this system is I've got a passport so I can travel freely between countries. I've got a driver's license so I don't have to be harassed and argue with police officers every day on the side of the road. And, I'll use a debit card to buy airline tickets online. That's it. That's the only thing they have on me anywhere. Virtually apart from that, I'm a ghost. I have no social security number. I have no tax file number. I've never been on an electoral roll. I've never had an electricity bill in my name or a rent bill in my name, or I've never had a credit card. I've never done any of this stuff. So I'm kind of a ghost for them, really. I've just lived my life that way. I've just always.
How do you keep a roof over your head?
Well, I've got friends everywhere. I give to everybody that I know. I spend my life giving, and because I give to people, I've got family everywhere, and people invite me to stay, and I stay all over the place. And I've got a place in Australia that's been kind of gifted to me that I can stay in for as long as I want, because I help the guy who owns it, and I gift things to him, and he gifts things to me, and it just works. I mean, I've always lived my life in a gift culture, and I believe that if you give to people, the world opens up for you, and it does. I go to stay in Holland for a month, and I've got friends there who would love me to come and stay. Who I'd go and stay with them for a weekend. It's no problem, and I can go and stay anywhere I want. So it just kind of works out. Like I said, if you throw yourself to the wind, you can ride it. And if you give your life, if you spend your life in giving to people, you'll find the world gives back to you. Things just work out for you.
Right.
Don't have a stake in the outcome of your actions and what you do. I don't need to be anywhere. I don't need to own any land, because you can't own any land anyway. You buy land, it owns you then. So, you can't own the earth. The earth owns you. The earth's been here for 4.6 billion years. You think you really own some? Seriously.
Right.
So,
Well,
I think it's our priorities.
I find people to get there, they can get somewhere if we give them an idea of what it looks like. So you're talking about yourself individually, and there's a certain percentage of the world's population that has lived like you do, and you've spent the greater part of your life doing it. And so how could we take that out to the masses? Because you end up staying somewhere where somebody owns or rents something. So
I know.
In some way, second generation, you're still in the system, but it's second generation. It's not your first generation.
Well, you can't. You have to be in the system in order to be in the world. That's the problem. But I mean, at least I try to lighten people's loads by being in the world. And I believe that if we were to just connect with each other, we'd be able to break free of this system. We would. It's our separation from each other in our communities. If we start giving to the people around us and giving to our neighbours and helping people, but giving to ourselves as well. I mean, don't deplete yourself in service of others. Give to yourself as well, But we could break out of this system. It's our separation that creates the system, that allows us the system to be perpetuated. It's just we remain so separated from each other. We don't have the respect for each other. And then if we start giving, we allow people to take from us. We've got to stop that as well. And things like community gardens. I've even suggested people, if you've got living in a block in a suburb, what if everybody pulled down all their back fences and put a community garden in between all the houses, and everybody on the block got involved and had a pond in there for their kids to play in? And I mean, imagine what you could create. You could create a community, a sustainable community in every suburban block in America or in Australia or in England. If people wanted to do it, if they were prepared to break down the barriers between them and their neighbours, it's what's going to create that spark in people. What's going to create that inspiration in people? What can we do to break down the barriers with the people around us, those closest to us, who closest to us in proximity? Because we have all our family and all our friends we're close to, but we don't know the people next door. And if it comes down to the wire, it's the people next door we're going to need to be counting on, and they're going to need to be counting on us.
Right.
So why have we got that separation? We need to find ways
to
break
their neighbors anymore. Yeah, people don't know their neighbors anymore. When I grew up in the 60s in Pennsylvania, in the United States, we knew every single family on the block and every child born and every grandmother that died. But now it's a completely different world. What were you going to say, Sasha?
Well, I'm just still cogitating on this idea of the boycott, the blue states, the California, Oregon, Washington, New Mexico, Massachusetts, are basically saying we will not comply. We will no longer participate in the federal government's exclude our Chicano people and throw them out of the United States. We will protect our Spanish American and other minority populations. And so that's an example of a coalition of liberal states that are saying, no, we will not participate in this institution of throwing people out because they're from some other country.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's great. That's great. And, even the whole concept of countries, I mean, I can understand in this type of a world, we need to have secure borders and security and all that sort of stuff. I mean, countries, the whole concept's ridiculous, really. It should be a free
Right.
world. People just should get along. Hopefully we'll reach a point one day where we'll outgrow all these differences and all this nationalism and all this rubbish that, enslaves us. Like you say, the rise of patriotism that they use to squash the anti-war movement and everything. Hopefully we'll rise above all that sort of stuff one day. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
Wow. So let's just imagine. I helped him. Yeah, imagine John Lennon. Imagine there's no countries, no religions too. And
nothing to fight or die for, and no religion too.
Right.
Imagine all the people living life in peace. You might think we're dreamers, but we're not the only ones. I know someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. That's what John said.
Well, it certainly would be nice, wouldn't it? It certainly would be nice. But what's gonna do that? I mean, religious differences, social differences, what it's going to take to help people understand that all this stuff is contrived. We're facing a common foe here, and it's this common foe that keeps us divided. Divide and conquer is the motto, and it works so well. And that's why things like we just saw in Charlottesville and all of these protests and this left-right, are you a Trump or are you a Hillary Clinton or whatever? It's all so ridiculous. All of it is so ridiculous. All of this threatening against other countries, hating Muslims and hating this and hating that. It's all theatre. It's all been constructed, and it's all the whole basis of the control grid is this divide and conquer mechanism we've been led into, and that we continually perpetuate. As soon as we put all that down and turn and face the system, we'll create freedom by default.
Those religious divisions were introduced by the Anunnaki. That's one of the things we've traced back. It's all propaganda and psychological manipulation control, and so we think that that's real. And if you go into the history, you can track it down, and you go, oh, okay, it was just put in there intentionally to divide and conquer us, because there were millions of human beings and only about 900 to 1,000 Anunnaki, and they had to come up with some system to prevent us from first realizing they could be killed. They were long-lived, but they weren't invincible. And some of them did get wounded. And so they put this whole control mechanism, and we've been living under that ever since. And it's ridiculous. But, how do we do this? How do we get people to realize that there's spirituality within all these religions, but the dogma is the propaganda, is the psychological manipulation and control that was purposely put there to give the illusion that we have to have an enemy and fight against. So anyway, final words to you guys. What would you like to say, Max? We're coming up at the end of the show.
Well, just pay attention, folks. Pay attention to the train that's coming, and do what you can to connect with your neighbours, and do what you can to help your kids get back in touch with their humanity and get them away from this technological world that they're being led into. The technological grid, the smart grid, is the New World Order itself. So rather than pointing the fingers at people, have a look at the tech that you're using, have a look at what you're doing in your everyday life, and have a look at where you're being led, and have a look at where this is going to go if it is allowed to, go to its natural conclusion. We're going to end up in a fully autonomic system where every single aspect of our lives is controlled. And the only people who can turn it around is the people now who are aware of it, our generation, because the kids coming up won't be able to. They will have no reference point. A lot of the teenagers and the millennials are completely unaware of this anyway. So, it's up to those who are awake to really get out there and start making some noise and get involved about it. There's also a resource. If you go to my website, thecrowhouse.com, scroll down the homepage and you'll see a video called 5G, the elephant in the living room. Just beneath that is a link to a website which has got printable resources for parents and schools regarding 5G. Get that stuff, download it, print it out, and get it out to people and start making waves in your local community, because we can still turn this around, but only if people are willing to get involved on the ground.
Excellent. Sash, what did you want to say?
Well, besides the thing that three things: bring the troops home, boycott the bosses, and break the boxes.
Right. So, start locally. You may not feel like you can do things on a global level, but if you get active, we have a very active local group that fights Monsanto. We managed to vote them off the island, but of course they have money and they somehow get in there and override the governments, but you just keep standing up to them, and gradually you gain control and you can take your charge of your life and take it back. That's the end.
Great talking.
Thank you very much, Max. Go
It's my
see.
pleasure, guys. I'll talk to you again.
Yeah.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
You need some more speed records in this day and age. You need coverage.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping off cameras in your face?
Those root weevils write history.
Many of you know that quote by Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. Well, you can, and Event Horizons will give you those truths. So when you're mad as hell and not going to take it anymore from that memorable senior network, you'll know just what to do. We will draw you in and become your news addiction at Event Horizons. Join us Monday through Friday.